world, a world filled with unknown creatures and unimaginable beauty. Lisa felt as though she was venturing into an uncharted universe as she sank into the depths of the ocean. Alien-like creatures surrounded her, flaunting their striking colors and unusual forms, as if they were plucked from the pages of a science fiction novel. Bright and vivid fish raced past her in flashes of neon, their scales gleaming in the sun's warm rays. In mesmerizing patterns, schools of silver fish whirled around her, as if in a trance, like a rhythmic and hypnotic dance. The beauty of the underwater world faded as Lisa's eyes fixated on a looming figure in the distance. It seemed to be another, leaving her helpless and mutilated in its wake. He was frozen in fear, unable to process what was happening before his very eyes. The shark's powerful jaws snapped and tore at her flesh, its razor-sharp teeth sinking deep into her body, causing blood to cloud the water. As Lisa's body was being torn apart, the guide felt a sickening feeling in the pit of his stomach, knowing that he had failed to protect her. His mind raced with thoughts of what he could have done differently, but it was too late. The shark, having taken its fill, grabbed Lisa's lifeless carcass and dragged it down to the murky depths of the ocean, leaving the guide in a state of shock and disbelief. He felt helpless, his mind numb as he tried to process the tragedy that had just unfolded before him. The other tourists and members of the diving crew frantically reached out to the authorities, their voices trembling as they recounted the gruesome attack. The authorities quickly dispatched a team of search and rescue divers to scour the surrounding waters, their powerful flashlights cutting through the murky depths like blades. But as they searched and searched, the bleak reality began to set in. There was no hope in finding Lisa alive. After 2 days of searching, all that was found was Lisa's oxygen tank, with scratch and bite marks on its sides. The incident served as a haunting reminder of the unpredictable nature of apex predators and the dangers that lay hidden beneath the tranquil waters. Although the great white shark is often considered the most dangerous species of shark in the world, this is a misconception. While they are the most powerful species of shark, bull sharks are actually more dangerous, as they are far more aggressive and more likely to attack humans when interacting with them. They have the tendency to stick to shallow coastal waters and can sometimes migrate up rivers when looking for new places to feed in. Bull sharks can be found all around the world, but the case that we're bringing to you today was noted in Sierra Leone, where Michelle Jones, a tourist, would learn the full picture in the United States of their lives for many years before Michelle's husband announced that they were taking a trip. She was surprised, and Roger explained that he had won a bonus at his job, and they could use some of their savings to. Sierra Leone had fantastic sights, and its beaches were ideal for tourists to lounge and relax from the stress of life. Their trip was booked in no time, and they had 2 weeks of relaxation ahead of them. They arrived in Sierra Leone on July 17, 1998, after a long flight with a few layovers, so they were quite exhausted and decided just to head to their accommodation and call it a day. The next few days were spent seeing the sights of the city, visiting. Since they were the type to jump at the chance for new experiences, they decided to go on the cruise. 2 days later, the cruise was set to start at 9 a.m., so Michelle and Roger got there 30 minutes early. There were 10 more people aside from them, and the tour guide was in high spirits and quite friendly, so the mood was good. They had never been on a cruise before, so they were excited for the day to come. The cruise took 2 hours to reach its initial destination, after which they would have some time to enjoy the sights and whatever they wanted to do. Then they had the trip back. The trip to Tenerife was relaxing and enjoyable, as the weather was on their side, and the guide's stories about Sierra Leone was. The trip back to Freetown was much the same, but something that made the boat slow down was a small shiver of sharks accumulating around a single point in the water, something you wouldn't see too often. In the emergency room, the doctors informed Roger that Michelle had lost nearly 35% of her blood, which was near the lethal point, but she would survive. It took a few days for her to stabilize before she could be seen, so Roger was more than relieved when he saw his wife was okay. Her injuries were debilitating, as there was some nerve damage and loss of function, so she needed a good deal of physical therapy to be able to walk. She said that what happened in Sierra Leone was tragic, but it was the way nature worked. She fell into the shark's plate, and they responded instinctively. A crew of experienced fishermen who had been working together for years. They had all grown up in the coastal town of Yokohama, Japan, and had learned to fish from their fathers and grandfathers before them. They had caught all kinds of fish, from small anchovies to large tuna, and had even managed to snag a few exotic fish that had fetched a high price at the local fish market. But there was one fish that had always eluded them, and that was the shark. Sharks were known to be one of the most elusive and dangerous fish in the sea, and catching one was considered a feat of great skill and bravery. Toshiro had heard that there was a high demand for sharks.
Eager to learn from her experience, Izzy shared her wisdom, offering tips on how to stay safe while riding the waves. She spoke of understanding the ocean's moods, recognizing the signs of marine life, and the importance of always being prepared. The group sat around a bonfire as the sun set, casting a golden hue over the waters. They exchanged stories, laughed, and sang songs. The camaraderie was palpable, and Izzy felt a deep sense of belonging. The ocean had brought them all together, and in that moment, everything felt perfect. Weeks turned into months, and life in Wavecrest went on. The story of Izzy's encounter with the bull shark became a part of the town's lore. Tourists often asked about the brave surfer lady, and locals pointed them to her beachside home. Izzy continued to surf every day, her passion for the sport undiminished. The ocean, with all its unpredictability, remained her constant companion. She often thought of the bull shark, wondering where it was and what it was doing. She felt a strange kinship with the creature in her heart, a bond forged in mutual respect. Years later, as Izzy rode a particularly challenging wave, she felt a familiar presence in the water. Glancing down, she saw the unmistakable silhouette of a bull shark swimming alongside her. The shark, perhaps the same one from all those years ago, seemed to acknowledge her presence before disappearing. And
he knew that sharks were dangerous and that any misstep could be fatal, but he was determined to catch the shark, and he believed that he had the skills and experience to do so. Toshiro, being the most experienced fisherman in the crew, took the lead and began taunting the shark with his fishing pole, hoping to provoke it into attacking. But the shark was not easily fooled. It circled their boat, watching him carefully and waiting for an opportunity to strike. Toshiro cast his line, using a large piece of fish as bait. He waited patiently for the shark to bite, hoping that he had chosen the right spot and the right time to catch it. The tension on his fishing line was palpable, and he could feel his adrenaline rising as he waited for the shark to take the bait. Finally, the shark made its move, lunging at the bait with lightning speed. Toshiro pulled his line away, trying to get the shark to come closer to the boat so they could catch it. The crew was excited, and they cheered Toshiro on, watching as he fought with the shark. But the shark was too quick, and it turned on him, attacking his arm and dragging him into the water. The crew quickly sprang into action, pulling Toshiro back onto the boat and attempting to save his life. They saw that Toshiro had suffered serious injuries, with bite marks on his arm and torso, and blood was gushing from the wounds. The crew knew that time was of the essence, and they immediately began to administer first aid to Toshiro. One of the crew members applied pressure to the wounds to stop the bleeding, while another crew member checked Toshiro's pulse and breathing. The crew realized that they needed to get Toshiro back to shore as soon as possible so he could receive proper medical attention. They radioed for emergency assistance and were able to get in touch with the Coast Guard, who sent a rescue helicopter to their location. In the meantime, the crew worked tirelessly. The crew helped to transfer Toshiro onto a stretcher and lifted him onto the helicopter. They stayed with him during the flight back to shore, offering words of encouragement and comfort, mixed with utter terror as Randall felt his life slipping away in the jaws of the monstrous predator. The world around Randall seemed to vanish in an instant as he found himself trapped inside the jaws of the great white shark. The darkness was absolute, and the only sound he could hear was the deafening crunch of the shark's razor-sharp teeth slicing through his flesh and bones. The pain was indescribable, as if every inch of his body was being ripped apart by 1,000 knives. His ribs were crushed under the pressure of the shark's jaws, and he knew in that moment that he was doomed. As the shark clenched its massive jaws on Randall's body, his lifeless form hung limply in the water, at the mercy of the animal's frenzied movements. With each violent thrash, the water churned with an ominous blend of swirling crimson and murky green. The shark's razor-sharp teeth shredded Randall's flesh, creating a gory, macabre display in the water. The predator's movements were so powerful that it dragged Randall's mangled remains down into the dark, abyssal depths of the ocean, far from the safety of the surface. It was a gruesome and unsettling sight, a grim reminder of the dangers that lurk beneath the waves. The attack was so sudden that the diving crew was not able to react accordingly. Randall's body was never found, and the story of the attack sent fear and terror to the diving community. It was a reminder that nature was unforgiving, and even the bravest and most experienced of thrill seekers were not immune to its dangers. The trip arrived, and the family woke up early to load up their car. They had packed everything they needed, from snacks and water to clothes and toiletries. Jackson had even brought his guitar, hoping to practice during the long car rides. As they drove out of the neighborhood, Mrs. Thompson put on some music and the family sang along. They drove through several states, visiting the Grand Canyon, Mount Rushmore, and Yellowstone National Park, taking hundreds of photos to document their adventures. The Thompson family had been on a road trip for a week, exploring different parts of the country and having the time of their lives. They woke up one morning to the sound of seagulls and the smell of salt water in the air. They remembered that they were near a beach and decided to spend the day there. The family packed up their towels, sunscreen, and snacks, the water, barking happily as they splashed around. The family joined him, wading into the waves and feeling the cool water wash over their feet. The children were laughing and playing. She decided to take her whole family to the island of Maui in Hawaii, a place known for its idyllic beaches and tranquil waters. The idea of exploring the stunning coastline and indulging in water activities was enough to invigorate her soul. Melissa's family was a diverse and dynamic group, with each member having their own unique traits and personalities. Her parents, who had retired after years of hard work, were a happy couple, enjoying the peace and serenity that life after Haven that welcomed Melissa's family with open arms. The turquoise waters glimmered in the sunlight, and the white sandy beaches stretched for miles, inviting them to explore. The constant murmur of the waves crashing against the shore provided a soothing soundtrack to their adventures, while the soft sand tickled their toes. But beneath the idyllic scenery lay a world of danger, and it was only a matter of time before they would find themselves entangled in its grasp. As the sun began to set, Melissa and her family sat down at a beachside bar to enjoy a drink and soak up the ice. A feeling of unease began to settle in the pit of their stomachs. However, while swimming, Melissa noticed a group of large shadows lurking in the murky waters. Curious, she used her underwater flashlight to shine a light on the shadows. Melissa was petrified to see a pack of tiger sharks stalking the murky waters. In a panic, Melissa swam to the surface and alerted her whole family. The family were in a frenzy, thrashing relentlessly with their efforts to reach the safety of the waiting boat. The chaos caught the attention of the sharks. The pack of sharks swam towards the commotion. Realizing that there's prey in the water, the predators went on a feeding frenzy. The rest of the family were almost upon the boat, but Melissa was not so lucky. In a matter of seconds, she was surrounded and circled around by a pack of hungry tiger sharks. Melissa could see the fins of 5 sharks circling around her. She tried to swim away as fast as she could, but the sharks were faster. Suddenly, one of the predators lunged at her, biting Melissa's left leg. Melissa screamed in agony as she felt the shark's razor-sharp teeth tear her flesh. The water around them was crimson red with Melissa's blood mixing with the salt water. The smell of the blood in the water crazed the other sharks, who were overcome with their primal instincts and hunger. The other sharks started attacking Melissa, who was helpless against the might of the predatory beast of the sea. As the first shark latched onto Melissa's leg, tossing her around like a rag doll in the water, one shark latched onto Melissa's arm. Suddenly, in a bone-crunching bite, both sharks bit off Melissa's limbs. Melissa couldn't even scream, as another shark bit off her head. The sharks continued their harrowing attack. Some sharks began ripping the other limbs, while one bit on Melissa's torso, dragging her mangled, lifeless body to the depths of the ocean. Melissa's family could only watch in horror as this pack of tiger sharks ripped her apart. The Coast Guard responded to the distress call of the guide, but it was no use. After several days of search, no part of Melissa was found. Her family was left with the emotional scar of watching their beloved Melissa devoured by the primal predators of the sea. On the pristine waters of Monterey Bay, casting a warm glow on the tranquil scene below, the gentle waves lapped against the shore, creating a soothing soundtrack to the picturesque landscape. The clear blue sky stretched out above, inviting anyone to venture out into the endless expanse of the ocean. It was a day that begged to be enjoyed, a day that whispered promises of adventure. Wounds on Andrew's body worse. He felt as though his body was being ripped apart piece by piece. Adrenaline continued to surge through his veins, keeping him from passing out, but he knew that he couldn't hold on forever. Andrew was on the brink of losing consciousness when he felt a sudden release of pressure from his body. He gasped for air, feeling the stinging sensation of salt water seeping into his wounds. The water around him was a gruesome shade of red, a stark contrast to the serene blue it once was. The shark had released him, but Andrew knew that he was not out of danger yet. As Andrew gasped for air, trying to keep his head above water, he saw the unmistakable shape of the great white shark closing in on him once again. The predator's dorsal fin slicing through the water like a knife, creating a chilling wake behind it. Andrew's heart pounded in his chest as he realized the shark was making another attempt to attack him. Andrew's survival instincts kicked in as he lashed out at the monstrous predator with all his might. Every push and kick was fueled by his fear and determination to stay alive. The shark recoiled, surprised by the sudden attack, and retreated to the dark abyss below. Andrew's mind raced as he struggled to stay afloat, his senses on high alert for any sign of the relentless predator. Despite his fear and pain, Andrew refused to give up. He mustered all the strength he had left to try and make his way back to the shore, but his mangled thighs and abdomen screamed in agony with each movement. He knew that time was running out, and the thought of the shark lurking just below the surface sent shivers down his spine. Fortune was on Andrew's side as a band of paddleboarders caught sight of his distress and sprang to his rescue. Without hesitation, they hoisted him onto their paddleboard, determined to bring him safely back to shore. Andrew clung to the board with all his might, wincing in pain as the salty spray of the ocean stung his wounds. Finally, they reached the shore, where a group of bystanders rushed to help them pull Andrew from the board and onto the sand. San Francisco, and the eerie sight of Alcatraz Island, looming in the middle of the water, seemed to call out to him, and without any particular reason, he decided to take the boat for a trip around the island. The situation turned dire when the vessel's engine suddenly faltered, refusing to restart. Left stranded in the frigid waters near the island, Francis attempted to call for assistance, but was informed that it could be a considerable amount of time before a tugboat would arrive to aid him. With no means of propulsion and an uncertain wait ahead, he found himself in a precarious predicament. As Francis sat there waiting for the tugboat to rescue him and his stranded vessel, he couldn't help but feel restless. Something was nagging at him, like a persistent itch that he couldn't scratch. Suddenly, he remembered the acrid scent of smoke that had filled his nostrils earlier, emanating from the engine room. His curiosity piqued, he made his way to the aft of the boat, gingerly leaning over the edge of the deck to peer into the mechanical abyss below. It was then in that vulnerable position that fate decided to strike its cruel hand. Before Francis could react, a monstrous figure emerged from the depths of the frigid waters, surrounding the boat. It was a behemoth of the sea, a great white shark, with jaws wide open and rows of serrated teeth glistening in the sunlight. With ferocious speed, it lunged at Francis, sinking its teeth into his shoulder with a bone-crushing force. A blood-curdling scream escaped Francis's lips as searing pain shot through his body. He felt as if his flesh was being torn apart, the shark's teeth slicing through his skin like a hot knife through butter. Blood poured out from the wound, mingling with the salty waters of the San Francisco Bay, staining the once calm surface a deep crimson. Francis thrashed and writhed, desperately trying to free himself from the jaws of the predator. But the shark's grip was relentless, its teeth sinking deeper into his shoulder with each thrash and pull. The excruciating pain was overwhelming, and Francis could feel his strength ebbing away, replaced by a numbing sensation as blood loss took its toll. As the water closed in around him, Francis realized he was in a fight for his life. He tried to fend off the shark with his free hand, desperately striking its sleek body, but it seemed impervious to his feeble attempts. The shark's thrashing movements only served to drag Francis further away from the safety of the boat, deeper into the icy waters of the bay. Francis felt a sense of hopelessness creeping over him. His body grew weak, and his vision blurred. He knew he was running out of time. But then, a surge of determination coursed through him, fueled by a primal instinct to survive. Summoning every ounce of strength he had, Francis reached out with his free hand and groped for the shark's eye. With a primal roar of pain and determination, Francis mustered every bit of strength he had to hold on to the shark's eye, feeling its squirming body thrash and writhe in agony beneath him. His grip was unrelenting, his fingers digging into the soft flesh of the predator's eye as he clung to life with every fiber of his being. The shark, shocked by the sudden attack, momentarily let go of Francis's shoulder, giving him the chance he needed to pull himself away from its razor-sharp teeth. Francis felt a searing pain rip through his flesh as he tore himself free, his shoulder and arm mangled beyond recognition. But he refused to give up even as the water around him turned crimson with his own blood. He knew that his only chance of survival was to fight back with everything he had. With a primal scream of defiance, Francis kicked the shark's nose with all his might, feeling the force of the impact reverberate through his entire body. The shark, stunned and in pain, swam away in a sudden burst of speed, disappearing into the murky depths. Francis was left floating in the water, bleeding and battered, but alive. He knew he couldn't make it back to the boat on his own, but he refused to give up. With a flicker of hope, he looked towards the horizon, desperately scanning for any signs of rescue. And then, like a beacon of hope, a tugboat appeared on the horizon, rushing towards him. It was the backup he had called for earlier. Francis felt a surge of relief and gratitude as he was pulled out of the water and onto the safety of the tugboat. He was whisked away to the hospital, where he received urgent medical attention for his severe injuries. Despite the devastating loss of his left shoulder, arm, and hand, Francis emerged from his encounter with a great white shark as a living testament to resilience and survival. His body bore the scars of the harrowing ordeal, a reminder of the ferocity of the ocean. As he grew older, his fascination only deepened, especially when it came to the creatures that call the underwater world their home. He was mesmerized by their power, grace, and raw beauty, and he wanted to share their magnificence with the world. Ryan became a skilled underwater photographer, always on the lookout for that perfect shot that would capture the essence of the ocean's predators. He spent countless hours studying their behavior and movements, observing their hunting strategies, and waiting patiently for the right moment to snap a photo. He dove deep into the ocean, braving the dark and the cold, determined to capture the elusive creature. As Ryan's muffled screams fell on the deaf ears of the ocean, the shark prepared to strike again, stalking its prey as it circled around him. Ryan's strength was waning, and his mangled leg was drowning him in pain. The shark lunged once more, its jaws gaping wide, ready to finish the job it had started. But this time, Ryan was prepared. Instinctively, he reached for the knife on his waist and plunged it into the shark's eye with all his might. The shark recoiled in pain, thrashing wildly in the water before retreating into the depths of the ocean. But Ryan's victory was short-lived. He was almost out of breath, his vision growing dim as he fought to stay conscious. As Ryan lost all hope, he saw a local diver approach him, a glimmer of hope in an otherwise hopeless situation. The diver managed to pull Ryan towards his boat, performing first aid as he called for rescue. Despite the diver's valiant efforts, Ryan's condition was critical. He drifted in and out of consciousness during the journey towards the hospital, traveled the world, experienced new cultures, and lived life on her own terms. But she knew that in order to do that, she would need to save up a substantial amount of... Magdalene sold her house, bought a small RV, and set out on the road. Over the next few years, she traveled all over the United States, visiting national parks, historical landmarks, and small towns. She met new people, tried new foods, and saw things she had never seen. She came across a small beach town that caught her eye. It was a picturesque place with quaint little shops and cafes lining the streets and a long sandy beach stretching out in front of her. Magdalene knew she had to stop and explore. She parked the RV in a nearby campground and spent the next few days wandering around the town. She met some friendly locals who showed her their favorite spots, including a hidden cove that was only accessible at low tide. Magdalene spent hours sitting on the beach, watching the waves crash against the shore and feeling the sun on her face. As she walked through the town, Magdalene couldn't help but notice how relaxed everyone seemed. People strolled along the streets, stopping to chat with each other or sit at outdoor tables and enjoy. Magdalene found herself drawn to the idea of settling down in this little town. She had been on the road for years now, and while she loved the freedom and adventure of traveling, she was starting to feel a little bit lonely. She missed having a community of people around her, and she longed for a place to call home. After some thought, Magdalene decided to take the plunge. She found a small cottage for sale on a quiet street just a few blocks from the beach, and she decided to buy it. She spent the next few months fixing it up. It circled the boat and came back for a second attack. The shark reappeared, its massive jaws closing in on her arm. Magdalene screamed in terror as the shark clamped down on her arm, dragging her into the water. Pain shot through her body as the shark shook her violently, trying to tear her arm off. Magdalene's mind raced with fear and panic as she desperately fought back, hitting the shark with everything she could find. But the shark was too strong, and Magdalene's efforts seemed to only anger it more. Just when she thought all hope was lost, Magdalene spotted a nearby boat. With all her strength, she managed to break free from the shark's grip and swim towards the boat, yelling for help. The occupants of the boat quickly sprang into action, pulling Magdalene out of the water and taking her to shore. Her arm was badly injured, and she was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. Magdalene spent the next few weeks in the hospital, recovering from her injuries. The attack had left her with deep wounds and extensive nerve damage in her arm, making it difficult to move or even hold things. She was devastated to learn that she might not ever fully regain the use of her arm. Despite the setback, Magdalene refused to give up on her dream of living in the beach town. She worked tirelessly to rehabilitate her arm, undergoing multiple surgeries and months of physical therapy. Slowly but surely, she began to regain some movement in her arm, but it would never be the same. Magdalene's experience with a shark attack had left her with a newfound appreciation for life. She realized that every moment was precious and should be treasured. She decided to use her experience to inspire others, sharing her story and encouraging people to never give up on their dreams, no matter what obstacles they might face. In the end, Magdalene found that her dream of settling down in a small beach town had come true. Despite the hardships and challenges she had faced, she had found a community of people who welcomed her with open arms and helped her through her recovery. She continued to explore the town and surrounding areas, but now with a newfound appreciation for life and a deeper sense of gratitude for every moment.
Their limits like never before. The boat cut through the deep blue waters, and the anticipation in the air was palpable. Lucy and Jeff prepared their equipment, thrown into the churning waters, their survival instincts debris from the wreckage, and used it to fend off the shark as it closed in, its menacing eyes fixed on it, their hearts pounding in their chests. With every swing of the makeshift weapon, Lucy pushed the predator back, buying them precious moments of respite. But the shark's determination was unwavering, and it continued its relentless danger that lurked beneath. They could feel the exhaustion setting in, but they couldn't afford to give in to fatigue. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of struggle, they reached the shores of Saros Island. Their bodies ached from the ordeal and were covered in sweat, reassuring sight of a rescue boat approaching. Lucy and Jeff fell behind them. As the rescue team reached the shore, they extended a helping hand to Lucy and Jeff. The white shark, defeated and frustrated, circled in the distance, unable to claim its prey. 100 meters to reach the safety of Saros Island, and their distress call had been answered. A profound sense of gratitude and reflection marked the journey back to civilization. Lucy knew she had pushed herself to the limits, and this experience would forever be etched in her memory. Jeff, the cameraman who had been her steadfast companion throughout, had displayed remarkable courage, but for her and Jeff, they had made it together, a testament to their unwavering bond and unyielding forgiving, and survival was never guaranteed. Yet anything was possible with determination, resourcefulness, and a will to overcome the odds. Waves were not to be taken lightly. Warm and inviting glow over their journey. As they neared them, guided by his fatherly instincts, pulling alongside the trio, he extended a life-saving hand to each of them, helping them onto his boat. Their battered bodies, coated in seawater and fear, told the story of their harrowing ordeal. The great white shark, frustrated and hungry, circled nearby, unable to claim its prey this time. With the adrenaline still coursing through their veins, Grace, Jack, and Harry clung to the boat. A massive form emerged from the depths below, its dorsal fin slicing through the water with an eerie grace. A great white shark, a formidable sea predator, had locked onto their boat. The shark surged forward, its enormous jaws snapping shut with a horrifying force. Chalisa, sitting at the edge of the boat, was the closest to the predator's reach. In a split second, her world became a frenzy of terror as the great white shark clamped its razor shot to break free from the grip of the ruthless predator. Blood stained the water, a chilling reminder of their peril. Tom, driven by a father's instinct to protect his child, sprang into action. With adrenaline, he powered the boat forward, the engine roaring to life as he desperately sped towards Verotic Island. The race against time had begun, and Chalisa's life depended on reaching medical help as swiftly as possible. The island, a beacon of hope on the horizon, drew nearer with it, the boat's engine roaring to a halt as they made landfall for Chalisa and her family back to the mainland. As they boarded the boat, the island's natural beauty seemed bittersweet, a reminder of the adventure that had taken an unexpected and terrifying turn. The journey back to the mainland was marked by a solemn atmosphere. Chalisa, though still in pain, was now in capable hands, and the knowledge that she was receiving the best possible care brought some solace to her family. Tom and Chasey were grateful they had reached Verotic Island when they did, as it had a reminder of the unpredictable and unforgiving nature of the wild, California. It was a place where the salty breeze intertwined with the essence of hard work, resilience, and an enduring connection to the sea. Her family's legacy owed a bay. One clear summer morning, as the first light kissed the bay's waters, Nancy stood on the dock beside her uncle watching the Serenade, their trusty fishing boat sway gently with the tide. It was a small vessel, worn by years of hard work and unforgiving elements, but it symbolized their livelihood and the legacy they carried forward. Robert and Nancy prepared the Serenade for a day of fishing on the open ocean. The nets were carefully inspected, the bait secured, and the weathered charts unfolded to guide them to the most promising fishing grounds. The gulls overhead called out as if sharing in anticipation of the day's catch. They pushed the boat away from the dock, the water beneath them welcoming the sea and into the vast expanse of the open ocean. A sense of excitement and trepidation coursed off balance, their world descending into chaos. But amidst the turmoil and terror, fate offered them an unlikely reprieve. The shark, perhaps disoriented by the collision, veered away from the boat just as swiftly as it had attacked. It disappeared back into the ocean's depths, leaving behind only the ripples of its presence. As Nancy and Robert clung to the battered vessel, their hearts pounding and breaths ragged, they realized they had narrowly escaped the jaws of death. The Serenade bore the scars of the encounter, showing signs of damage from the shark's forceful assault. However, miraculously, they remained unharmed. With trembling hands, they assessed the damage to the boat. It had been a close call, a confrontation with nature's apex predator that had tested their mettle and resolve. The sea had delivered its warning, a reminder of the delicate...